The October 17, 2019 meeting of the Woodbridge Board of Education will please come to order. Mr. Secretary, will you please make a note that Mr. Molnar and Mr. Sedana will not be attending this evening due to other engagements, and Mr. Harris will be arriving a little late.
So noted.
Roll call, please, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson?
Here.
Ms. Bourdain?
Here.
Mr. Della Pietro?
Here.
Mr. Tamburello?
Here.
Mr. Velez?
Here.
And Mr. Treebwasser.
Here. Mr. Secretary, as required by the Sunshine Law, please read the notice of meetings.
Thank you, Mr. President. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this Act, the Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted as follows: January 4th, 2019, emailed to the Home News Tribune, the Star Ledger, and the Municipal Clerk's Office, posted in Avenel Middle School and the Board of Education Administration Building.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Mr. Del Pietro, will you please read the closed session statement?
In compliance with the Sunshine Law, the Board must go into closed session in order to discuss subjects exempted from the public portion of our meeting. The discussions to be held in closed session will be regarding personnel matters. Additionally, the Board will discuss the settlement agreement with the WTEA and a student's family. Any information regarding the closed session discussion will be released to the public when the reasons for discussing these matters in closed session no longer exist.
I have a motion by Mr. Della Pietro. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Anderson. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. We'll retire to closed session.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, it is my pleasure to introduce three of the many outstanding students who participate in our Gifted and Talented Music program. Nicole Chiba of Colonia Middle School in 8th grade. Nicole is a 13-year-old who currently is an 8th grader at Colonia Middle School. She is in the Gifted and Talented Music and Enrichment program. She has been studying piano for 7 years with Elena Bartolf in Scotch Plains. She has participated in piano auditions at Caldwell College for 5 years and has received the highest grade of outstanding every time. Besides playing piano, Nicole enjoys dancing, swimming, singing, and attending Polish school in Clark. Tonight, Nicole will be playing the piece Mazurka Op. 7, number 1 by Frederick Chopin. Peter Kane is a 5th grader at Port Reading, school number 9. He has grown up surrounded by music. The first time Peter performed in the public setting, he sang a verse of Turn, Turn, Turn in 2015 at the age of 5. Peter started showing an interest in piano at the end of grade 2. His first public performance on piano was at Ortoro's on Houston Street in New York City in 2019, performing Bohemian Rhapsody. The same year, he also started taking lessons with a piano teacher at a conservatory in Manhattan. Peter is also a fledgling composer. He enjoys all kinds of music, but as of late has found a particular affinity to classical music and the great composers such as Beethoven, Chopin, Liszt, and Bach. Tonight, Peter will be performing Mozart Sonata number 16, Movement 1. Sarah Vieira, 5th grader at School 21, loves to sing. She sings every day nonstop and is in the G&T for music. Sarah has participated in the choir in St. Agnes Church since kindergarten. Last summer, Sarah went to on-stage theater camp in the Zion Church in Clark and is currently in theatrical artist prep in Scotch Plains. Sarah has also performed for the seniors at the Ashbrook Nursing Home in Scotch Plains. Sarah loves to sing in front of people. It makes her feel like a better person knowing that they are happy and have a smile on their face. Sarah will be singing the Star Spangled Banner tonight.
Please rise for a salute to the flag and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do I have a motion to reconvene?
So motion?
I have a motion by Mr. Velez. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Bourdain. Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson? Ms.
Here.
Ms. Bourdain? Mr. Delapietro?
Here.
Mr. Harris?
Here.
Mr. Tamburello? Here. Mr. Velez? Here. Mr. Treebwasser?
Here. Will someone make a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meetings?
So motion?
I have a motion by Mr. Harris. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Anderson. Are there any corrections or additions? I have a motion by Mr. Harris, a second by Ms. Anderson. All in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Mr. Secretary, please state for the record, notice of bids received by the board.
Mr. President, there are no bids to report this time.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Dr. Zega, please state for the record, superintendent's report for the month of September 2019.
Mr. President, I have the following reports to present to the board. The student registers and the security and fire drill reports, suspension reports for elementary and secondary schools, bomb threat reports, and the reports of the attendance officer.
Thank you, Dr. Zega. Dr. Zega, will you please introduce our student representative, Brianna Talaka?
Brianna Talaka is a senior at Woodbridge High School. Brianna is actively involved in our school community and has served as a junior class officer and a senior class officer. Brianna plays a vital role at Woodbridge High School by serving as our color guard captain. Brianna is also an accomplished bowler and has been a member of the team for the past 4 years. Brianna has been a member of the National Honor Society for the past 2 years. Brianna is a top-ranking student in the senior class and plans to continue her studies next fall and major in biology. Brianna?
Good evening. So, the school accomplishments for Ford Avenue number 14, students and staff participated in the Week of Respect activities. New Jersey Transit presented an assembly on train safety to all students. The Sheriff Department conducted an anti-bullying assembly for all the students. The Ford Middle School students presented a Heroes and Cool Kids program to the 4th graders. The Grand Felloons will be presenting the Ways of Water assembly to all students. Students will participate in Trunk or Treat event and Halloween parade. Students and staff will be participating in the Veterans Day parade. For Matthew Jago, school number 28, the school is celebrating their 50th anniversary of educating children. The scores have begun to take an upswing, and they think that it's a huge success for their school. Students in grade 3 through 5 have been provided with classroom Chromebooks. The 5th graders will be attending a performance of The Lion King in New York City in April. A Friday night movie was held on the school lawn in September. The annual Halloween Hop will take place on October 25th, and our school park, which was destroyed by the fire, will have its grand reopening tomorrow, October 18th. For Avenel Middle School, this month they celebrate the Week of Respect, Fire Prevention, and School Violence Awareness. The classes are now utilizing Apple Classroom and a variety of educational apps. The 6th and 7th grade students are using their class sets of Chromebooks. And the school received recognition from the Broadcom Masters National Middle School Science Competition. The technology classes are now covering STEM and coding. The AMS community will be honoring the United States veterans by hosting a breakfast and coordinating an interactive program for their students. Their student council is coordinating a school-wide Spirit Week activity. They are continuing their Sidekick program, providing mentoring services to the elementary school students. For Woodbridge High School, their Interact Club has begun their annual Thanksgiving basket donation drive and will be collecting non-perishable food items until November 20th. The football team now is 5-0 and are ranked number 1 in the area by the Home News Tribune and number 15 in the state by the Star Ledger. The football team donated their gate receipts from admissions to the game, totaling over $2,000 to the Marisa Tuso Foundation. The girls' volleyball team is now 11-7 on the season. The girls' soccer team is now 8-4-2 on the season. The boys' soccer team is 7-6 on the season. The girls' tennis team is 6-6 and hosted a first-round state tournament match for the first time in over 15 years. The girls' cross-country team is now 4-2. A volleyball player, Nicole Biley, was named the Greater Middlesex County Player of the Week from NewJersey.com for the week of September 20th. Broadway night was held Tuesday, October 15th at 6 p.m. The fall one-act play Rumors will be performed on Tuesday, January 25th. The Chinese Honor Society held an educational program guiding Chinese high school students from the Hunan province. For 3 days, the Chinese immersion students accompanied the Honor Society ambassadors to classes in Woodbridge High School to help them learn about American school life. And next Friday, Woodbridge High School will be hosting the Trunk or Treat on October 25th from 4:30 to 6 p.m. And one of our students, Ali Jr., class of 2021, received a full athletic scholarship to play football at Central Michigan University.
And you're certainly welcome to spend the rest of the evening with us if you'd so choose to.
I have a lot of homework, so unfortunately I could not.
You're also an extremely bright young lady. One thing I did want to mention, that I don't know if everybody's aware, that the haunted house for Woodbridge High had to be canceled. It had to be canceled due to no fault at anybody at Woodbridge High or from the school district. Unfortunately, they were unable to secure a place to do it. Mr. Molnar has informed me on what an arduous task it is to get that accomplished, and quite honestly, at this point, they've just run out of time. So, Mr. Lotman, appreciate you being here, and we certainly appreciate all the efforts you and your staff have made to try and pull that off this year. Unfortunately, the economy's doing well, and there is really no place empty to hold the event. So, thank you, Brianna. Thank you, Mr. Lotman. Thanks to Woodbridge High for all their efforts. Superintendent's agenda. Dr. Zaga, do you have any recommendations this evening?
Mr. President, I have 27 items to present to the board. In addition, I will be presenting the annual district report of violence and vandalism for the 2018-19 school year. This report breaks down the incidents of violence, vandalism, harassment, intimidation, and bullying for the previous school year. It lists the counts of incidents by category, the nature of the HIBs, and the discipline imposed, and other measures imposed. I submit this for the board's approval. I would also like to mention that next week is our School Violence Awareness Week, where every school throughout the district will be participating in activities to address some of these incidents of harassment, intimidation, bullying, and violence. The activities for next week will be posted on our website tomorrow, as will the report if approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zaga. Do I have a motion on the superintendent's agenda?
A motion?
I have a motion by Mr. Harris. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Tamburello. Are there any comments or questions from the board? Any comments or questions from the public? Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain?
Yes.
Mr. Delapietro?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello?
Yes.
Mr. Velez?
Yes.
Mr. Treebwasser?
Yes. Policy and Planning Agenda, Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Treebwasser. The Policy and Planning Committee, on recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, presents the following 9 items. I move for the adoption of the foregoing.
I have a motion by Mr. Harris. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Tamburello. Any comments or questions from the board?
Mr. President?
Yes, sir, Mr. Harris.
I want to highlight number 4 for the audience and for those watching at home. Item number 4, we recognize Pastor Leslie Samuel and his congregation, the Metro Park Assembly of God Church that's located in Island. They were doing a day of service this past Sunday, and they had reached out to the school district to do something, and with Dr. Zaga and the Buildings and Grounds Department, we found a project for them to do that was paint a faculty lounge at School 18, and those volunteers came through, about 10 volunteers. On Sunday, I think it was the 13th or the 14th, painted the faculty lounge, so I wanted to give them a recognition for reaching out to us and and doing us a service. So thank you to Pastor Leslie Samuel and your congregation for your time and service, and thank you to Dr. Zega and your administration for making that happen. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Any comments or questions from the public? Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain?
Yes.
Mr. Delapietro?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello?
Yes.
Mr. Velez?
Yes.
Mr. Treebwasser?
Yes. Curriculum agenda, Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Treebosser. The Curriculum Committee, on recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools and Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, present the following 14 items. I move for the adoption of the foregoing.
I have a motion by Mr. Harris. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Tamburello. Any comments or questions from the board?
Mr. Treebosser, I'll say a couple, last two, I promise. I just want to recognize items number 1 and number 6 on the agenda here. We are responsible for educating our students K through 12, but these two items here, while taking during the high school years, they do benefit our students beyond our classroom and beyond graduation. Item number 1 is a program in partnership that this district has had with Lincoln Tech Technical Institute based here in Island. There's also a facility in South Plainfield. This program pairs our students interested in pursuing a medical assistant program at Lincoln Tech. Our students do some of their time here in the district, and then on the second half of their day, they work towards a career path as a medical assistant, and we're giving them a jump start for when they graduate and they continue the program at Lincoln Tech afterwards. I've done a tour over in Island, and it seems like a tremendous program, and I'm glad we are continuing this program here today. And I know our students are enjoying their experience. Finally, number 6, this is another college program connection that we have with Middlesex County College. Middlesex County College and the Woodbridge School District partner on mostly math courses, college-level math courses where students earn college credits. This new program is a partnership with Middlesex County College for a art course. So our students will have the opportunity to earn art college credits. So I want to recognize that. It's an opportunity for students to earn college credits while in high school, thus impacting their wallet when they do go on and pay for higher education. So I want to thank the administration for finding another partnership for our students. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Are there any comments or questions from the public?
David Pinkwitz, Island. First, I just had a question on item 12, since that might impact my child. This is about ASL 2 supplemental books. Is that for this school year, or is that for a subsequent school year?
Yes, if approved, it'll be for this year.
Okay. Then this is just a general comment, since I see everyday math is on the curriculum, about professional development, number 9. And I don't think we have enough discussion of the math curriculum at the elementary school, at least publicly. I've experienced both my children going through this since I started in the district 12 years ago. In my personal opinion of it, now I can't speak for how it affects every student, and there might be some students for whom it's a great curriculum. But for students, I think, that have an easier time learning math, I find everyday math, the whole spiral thing and everything else, I just find it to be holding students back. In my opinion, it does not work well for kids that at least the kids that understand the math concepts more quickly. And until they get to middle school, I think the curriculum, to me, is an impediment to them, in my opinion. Just wanted to state that. Thanks.
Thank you. We will have a brief 2 reports from Mr. Bader.
Thank you, Mr. Truebosser. The first report, and it is a hard copy provided within, is a 3-year access data, which basically is a test for our ELL students. And again, the first slide is a 3-year number of ELL students and their composite score, so a passing score is greater than 4.5. And as you see, 2016-17 is our baseline year. 17-18 is year one, and 18-19 is year two. And the first slide represents that our ELL population is increasing, and our passing rate, although it went down in year one slightly, is greater in year two than the baseline year. The second slide represents what happens in ELL in our program. We have magnet elementary schools that take students with different languages, and therefore we can pool our resources to help those students. Island Middle School is our magnet middle school for all ELLs, and each of our 3 high schools have programs that assist ELL learners. And from this slide, you can see the breakdown. Basically, we have our largest number in the elementary level. And from year 2017 to 18 to 18-19, we have a pretty dramatic increase in passing scores in proficiency at the elementary level. Middle school remained the same, and a slight decrease at the high school level. And the third slide demonstrates, again, for all 3 levels that we have students in, elementary, middle, and high school, the different parts of the assessment, including listening, reading, speaking, writing, comprehension, oral proficiency, and literacy proficiency, as well as an overall score. And again, you will see, generally speaking, that the highest number of passing scores. And again, I think this goes to the early intervention. The earlier the intervention, the younger the student, the more quickly, generally speaking, they move out of the ELL program because they're learning at such a fast rate. I also want to mention that in our district, we begin in pre-K with our ELL program. And last year, out of the 37 students who were in the program, 26 students in 1 year of pre-K were able to pass another assessment to move right into our mainstream population. So 70% of our pre-K students who entered ELL left the program right into the mainstream. We also wanted to mention a few strategies that have been noteworthy. One of our magnet schools, School 29, utilized a different teaching strategy this year, sheltered instruction. Sheltered instruction is when the ELL teacher goes into the regular ed classroom and works with the students inside their classroom versus pulling them out. That seemed to yield a very high passing rate at School 29. So we will be looking to expand the sheltered instruction program across the district. Our secondary curriculum is also was redone over the summer to include more differentiated and a greater number of leveled reading books for students to be able to work on and build up their literacy proficiency level in English. The next slide represents an alternate assessment for students with the most significant intellectual disabilities. In English language arts, mathematics, and science, it's called the Dynamic Learning Maps, or DLM. And although it is a very small part of our population, these students do not take the regular New Jersey student learning assessments. They take the DLM instead. And the DLM is done in a one-on-one environment with a lot of support from the teacher. And again, in grade 3, we had 9 students taking the test with 33% at target or advanced in both language arts and math. In grade 4, we had 8 students taking it with 50% of the students at target or advanced and 63% at or target or advanced in mathematics. In 5th grade, we had 8 students taking the language arts test and 9 taking math and science, with 0% of students at target or advanced in that group. Grade 6, we had 12 students taking the assessment with 17% again at or advanced target in language arts and math. In 7th grade, 16 students took the assessment with 56% of the students at target or advanced in language arts 0% in math. In grade 8, we had 9 students taking the assessment, with 22% of the students at or above target in language arts and 11% at or above target in math and science. And in grade 11, we had 30% of our students out of the 10 taking the assessment at or above target in language arts and 0% in mathematics and science.
Thank you, Mr. Bader. Roll call. Any comments or questions from the board? Any comments or questions from the public? Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain?
Yes.
Mr. Delapetro?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello?
Yes.
Mr. Velez? Yes. Mr. Treebwasser?
Yes. Finance and Insurance Agenda. Mr. Tamburello, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Finance and Insurance Committee, on recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools and the Business Administrator Board Secretary, presents the following 15 items. This evening, I move for the adoption of the foregoing 15 items.
I have a motion by Mr. Tamburello. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Delapetro. Any comments or questions from the board? Any comments or questions from the public? Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain?
On item number 1, I will be abstaining in the name of Susan Bourdain, yes on all others.
Mr. Delapetro?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello?
Yes.
Mr. Velez?
Yes.
Mr. Treebwasser?
Yes. Security and Safety Agenda, Mr. Delapetro.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Security and School Safety Committee, on recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, presents the following one item. I move for the adoption of the foregoing.
I have a motion by Mr. Delapetro. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Tamburello. Any comments or questions from the board? Any comments or questions from the public? Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain?
Yes.
Mr. Delapetro?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello?
Yes.
Mr. Velez?
Yes.
Mr. Treebwasser?
Yes. Athletics and Extracurricular, Ms. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Athletics and Extracurricular Committee, on recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools and the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction, presents the following one item. I move for the adoption of the foregoing.
I have a motion by Ms. Anderson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Velez. Do I have any comments or questions from the board? Any comments or questions from the public? Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain?
Yes.
Mr. Delapetro?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello?
Yes.
Mr. Velez? Yes. Mr. Treebwasser?
Yes. Buildings and Grounds Agenda, Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Buildings and Grounds Committee, on recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools and Business Administrator, present the following 4 items. I move for the adoption of the foregoing.
I have a motion by Mr. Harris. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Tamburello. Any comments or questions from the board? Any comments or questions from the public? Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain?
Yes.
Mr. Delapetro?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello?
Yes.
Mr. Velez? Yes. Mr. Treebwasser?
Yes. Transportation Agenda, Mr. Velez.
Thank you, Mr. President. Transportation Committee, on the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools and the Business Administrator Board Secretary, present the following 5 items, and I move for the adoption of the foregoing.
I have a motion by Mr. Velez. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Delapetro. Any comments or questions from the board? Any comments or questions from the public? Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain?
Yes.
Mr. Delapetro?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello?
Yes.
Mr. Velez? Yes. Mr. Treebwasser?
Yes. Personnel Agenda, Ms. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Personnel Committee, on recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools and the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, presents the following 39 items. I move for the adoption of the foregoing.
I have a motion by Ms. Anderson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Velez. Any comments or questions from the board? Any comments or questions from the public? Roll call, Mr. Secretary.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Ms. Bourdain?
Yes.
Mr. Delapetro?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Tamburello?
Yes.
Mr. Velez? Yes. Mr. Treebwasser?
I will abstain on item 14 and 19 and name Linda Treebwasser, yes on all other items. Mr. Bush, do you have any recommendations this evening?
No, I just want to thank Mr. Bader for having me to the in-service training for the JFK teachers. Was it just it was other teachers as well, right? It was everyone. It was everyone. All right. for the few who signed up for my program. I appreciate it. It was a great opportunity to be on the ground with some of your teachers and staff. Great people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. Is there any old business that should be brought before the attention of the board? Any new business to be brought before the attention of the board?
Mr. President, if I may,
Ms. Bourdain?
I'd like to mention the Pace Bazaar that's going to be taking place on November 16th at the Woodbridge High School gym from 10 to 3. Pace is our extended school year program for our special needs students, and as a parent in the organization, we hold a vendor event each year, money benefiting the summer program. So we can do things like buy the kids t-shirts for the program and any other fun little things that we get to do for them as parents. So I encourage you to go to Woodbridge High School on November 16th. There will be a Facebook page, Pace, I don't know what it's called, Pace Bazaar. Just Google that. The email address is PO Bazaar if you have any questions or know anybody who wants to be a vendor or just want to come out and buy some holiday gifts. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ms. Bourdain.
Mr. President.
Mr. Velez?
Want to make an announcement. The Woodbridge Police Department is now hiring for school crossing guards. It's a part-time position, and they're available now. Crossing guards assist children in crossing the street on their way to school, to and from. It could help the community while earning some good pay. Applications are available in our personnel office. For more information, you can contact the police department at the non-emergency number at 732-634-7700. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Velez.
Mr. President?
Ms. Anderson?
I'd just like to mention that Colonia High School PTO will be having an annual indoor circus, and it'll be performed by the New Jersey Circus Center. This will be on Sunday, November 17th. There'll be 2 shows, 12 p.m. and 2 p.m. The admission is $10 for 12 and over and $5 for children under the age of 12. Please contact the PTO if you're interested.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, just one quick
Mr. Della Pietro?
On Saturday, November 16th, between 10 o'clock in the morning and 1 o'clock, at the Ford's Firehouse, they'll be doing a car seat check. Any parents that have children that are in car seats, if they want to come down, we have the Middlesex County Sheriff's Department that will be there, make sure that the car seat is installed properly. And that's in conjunction with the Ford's Fire Department and also the Family Greenway Center. That's at the Ford's Firehouse at 667 King George Road in Ford's.
Thank you, Mr. Della Pietro. Any other comments or questions? Nothing?
Mr. President?
Yes, sir, Mr. Bader.
Thank you. I just wanted to, again, we had our Professional Development Day on Monday, and we had several outside companies come in on their own time and assist us and volunteer to share their expertise with our teachers. I want to thank Bush Law Group, CVS Pharmacies, Wellspring Health, the Greenway Family Success Center, and Woodbridge Public Library for participating.
Thank you, Mr. Bader. Anybody else? Okay. In keeping with my past practice, I'll just give a quick update on construction projects and environmental issues in the district. Woodbridge Middle, we are being told, is progressing nicely, and they are still anticipating the school to be ready on time. We are all keeping our fingers crossed that they are able to uphold their deadline. School 11 is continuing to work on punch list items, and we still anticipate the old Building 11 being brought down over the break. School 23 has had a couple of environmental concerns. The air quality tests were performed. Other tests were also performed, and everything at this point has still come back in a positive fashion. School 18 has really turned out exceptionally well. I wish we could have shared with the parents the way it was going to turn out in the very beginning of everything, but I'm glad that they at least trusted us and gave us the opportunity to prove that we were going to hold by our word and make that school a showcase as far as it being environmentally sound and safe and taking care of the issues that existed. And the lovely lady who spoke earlier talked about School 28 and the playground. The repointing of the school, I believe, is complete, and as she said, the playground will be dedicated tomorrow. So thank you very much. And in keeping with our past practice, we will open this portion of the meeting for statements from the public. If you wish to say something, please come to the microphone, provide your name, section of township in which you live for the record, and please limit your comments to no more than 5 minutes in accordance with Regulation 1100D. Also, please keep in mind I will answer no questions until you are done with your 5 minutes so that you have your full opportunity to say what you need to say or ask whatever questions you need to. Thank you.
David Pinkwitz, Island. I just had one question about the School 11, the demolition. So you mentioned the demolition is scheduled to happen over break, and I assume that's weather permitting and everything else. My one question is, with the debris that will be left from it, is that anticipated to be removed, or is that something that will be ongoing during the school year after the demolition occurs?
My understand, is that all you had for this evening, Mr. Pinkwitz?
That's all I have.
My understanding is that they're going to take it down and remove it. Now, I can't speak to if there's, delays, weather, or things that prevent them from removing it all, but that was why the administration and the board agreed that it be done over the break so that it would not expose the children to excessive dust or any other environmental issues.
Okay, or noise, which is really what I was asking about too. So.
I'm sorry?
Or the noise, like the trucks.
That's why we're
parting
having
away
it done over the break.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
That's true. Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Harris, second by Mr. Tamburello. All those in favor? Oh, yes, sir.
Mr. Ziega, I had sent an email to the mayor. He forwarded it to you.
I'm sorry, sir.
My name is James Stenke
Excuse
from
me.
Colonia.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Thank you for answering the question for me. I don't know if you remember. It's about the pullouts for band in the middle school. They're not being pulled out no more. It's killing the music program. I would hope you guys reconsider. Not all the middle schools are following it. High schools have both A and B. All year they do it. But if you want music to continue in the future, you're going to have to think about that now. That's it.
Thank you, sir.
So is there already a motion?
There's already a motion on the table.
Is there a second?
There's been a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting carried. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all very much. Enjoy the Yankee game.